Welcome in, everybody, to the Congruity 360 YouTube channel. My name is Dan C. Bearded. This gentleman right here is Mr. Nick, and this is the Congruity Corner live stream, episode number 13. If you guys appreciate this free content, just interact with the live stream. You can hit a thumbs up. You can share this stream. You can get involved in the chat like Christopher, Stan, Leo, and Stuart. Anybody else that's watching, we encourage you to get involved. It is a lot more fun that way. And if you're catching a replay in the future, please comment on the video to share your thoughts, your ideas, your questions, your challenges. It is an open community, and we love the involvement. Hello to Jim Harris in the chat as well. We love seeing familiar faces coming back again. Again, guys, my name is Dan. I am the co-host here. My job is to navigate the waters. My job is to guide the questions, come at it from kind of a layman's perspective, and break things down in a digestible form with little expertise on the matter. But that's why it's a co-host, and we have somebody that does have the expertise, does have the years of experience, and that would be Mr. Nick Phelps himself. Nick, today, 1 to 10, how you doing?
I'm going to throw it at a solid 7.5.
Okay.
I think that's pretty good. It's over the halfway mark. I'm not exaggerating and saying it's great, but you know what? Overall, I'm doing pretty good. I have an immobilized thumb today, which we can talk about on the stream, which is going to be, we'll a topic of discussion and a topic of some rescheduling for next week. But
yeah,
this is that's probably keeping me from being my normal 8.5, 9. I would say is probably some fun with the thumb.
Okay, I thought your 7.5 was a shot at my college GPA, but we'll take it here. And I guess early in the show is a good time to let people know. Next week, we will have our show. This is kind of a crazy month ahead for us, you guys, so stay tuned. And I've got a sister getting married. Nick's going to tell you about something going on, so stay tuned. We do have an Instagram. It is the Congruity Corner Instagram. Fantastic. We put up some shorts and reels, but also posts and reminders. You guys can ask questions and vote on polls. Next week, our show will be the same time, but it's going to be on Thursday. So Thursday next week, not Tuesday. I'll set YouTube accordingly. I'll put out reminders on Instagram, especially on Tuesday, then again on Thursday. So Thursday next week. Nick, what is going on? Why do we need to adjust the live stream next week?
Well, hopefully this is good news. I've had those of you who have followed our story over the years have probably remember I've had a number of hand surgeries over the year for trigger finger in various digits. And oddly enough, after having these 3 done already now and this one done last year around the same time, by the way, too. It was July. It was July of last year. Which is absolutely crazy. So now it's this thumb's turn. I have trigger finger in my left thumb, so they're going to do the trigger finger release surgery next Monday. So I figure being 24 hours out of surgery might be a little dicey on the live stream. We don't want me falling asleep or anything or forgetting what I'm talking about. So I figured maybe we would just go ahead and push that one down the road a little bit until Thursday.
Safety precaution. And
it's for your sake, not mine.
Exactly. It might be entertaining, but we're not going to risk it.
Not that kind of live stream.
For anybody out there that does not know, because I did not know until I met you and realized it, what is trigger finger?
It's a condition where it usually happens in way later in life. Why it's happening with me early on in life, no one really knows. They blame it on too much typing, but everyone types too much. So I don't think that's it. It's probably just something genetic, lurking. But it's basically trigger finger is when the tendon in your finger can't slide past the little pulley that's in your finger that lets your tendon slide and make your finger bend. So your finger gets locked, either closed or open, and it kind of pops when it goes between the two, and it's really annoying. And so it usually, my surgeon says I have the hands of like an 80-year-old electrician. He's like, why in the world do you have multiple fingers now with trigger fingers? So we're trying to figure out what's underlying, but as far as we can tell, it's just good old overuse, and it's just hitting me early instead of later in life. So is what it is. And but thankfully, I mean, there's not going to be many left after this one. I've already had 1, 2, 3, and this will be 4 and 5. They're doing my middle finger and thumb next week.
Oh,
So
wow.
they're doing 2 fingers at once just to save me the struggle. But basically what it does is it causes, like, if I make a fist, my finger gets stuck like this. So
That's
then you
so
kind of
crazy.
pops open and away it goes. So it makes typing not so much fun, and those sorts of things. So it's hopefully it's gonna be nice and quick, and a little bit of physical therapy for the middle finger because it's a little more complicated, I guess, than the thumb is. And we'll be back to normal.
I had months of physical therapy on my right middle finger as well. So yeah, I know that fun process. But next week, guys, Thursday, normal time, 2 p.m. Eastern. We will have it on YouTube and ready to go. And thank you, everybody in the chat. Stuart said, nice hat, Dan. Thank you. At first, it started out as something that was like different for me, and you wore it to be different, I actually really like it. I don't mind the look at all.
It looks pretty good. I like it.
Thank you.
How is it hot there though today?
I don't know.
Is that like an inside? Is that like an inside only hat when it's hot?
Probably. Yeah. I haven't stepped outside yet, so probably.
I imagine it gets a little warm in the heat. You step out in the sun when it's 90 with that bad boy on, and you'll probably get a little schmutzy.
Yeah, I could see that. I might have to experiment. I'll report back. I will report back. And hello, everybody. Hello, Moose. And then Mr. OD, the legend, who's been on this show twice now. Hello, sir. And speaking of the show, hey, JB, today is a fun one. For people that know me, one of my greatest pleasures in life is busting myths. I absolutely love to take commonly regurgitated information that sounds right and that just gets passed along and becomes like commonplace for being known, and then telling why it's not correct. And since I've started working this live stream and working with Congruity and talking to Nick about these deep subjects, and Pete and OD and so many of the other people, I hear things that I probably heard before. And now it bothers me because on one side, I've learned an insane amount, and I know some of the things that are being said are just false. Now, on the other side, I'm big on question everything, right? Trust but verify. If somebody says something, I'm all right with listening to them. I don't need to shut them down. But there's a lot of these topics that we're going to go over today where I'm like, I don't know if that's actually real. Like, I know it's been said, I know it's been passed down, but I don't know if it's actually real. And with it being cybersecurity, I think it is the perfect live stream, the perfect person to talk about with Nick. And a lot of these, I have a feeling Congruity 360 will fit in well with. And guys, if you want to check out the Congruity 360 link, it's in the chat. If something strikes your fancy today and you're like, oh, maybe a business that I know or I have could use this or needs this, let me look into it. They got a great Contact Us feature on the website and everything. So guys, go check that out. Hello to Jill. Nick, you ready to address some possible misinformation? Maybe it's accurate. Maybe you'll shock me on some of these and be like, no, Dan, this one's actually true.
Yeah, no, I'm ready to roll. And I'm kind of, I got a little bit of a preview from you, but I this is one of those stump the chump moments here. I got very little preview as to what we're talking about today. So be nice.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, and then I do have an article to show first real quick. You guys, this just popped up 3 or 4 days ago, and I think is just unbelievably on point with what we talk about. And this is from the Wall Street Journal. I just saw this pop up, and it says, hackers target remote work tools again. So I guess during the COVID stay-home days, it was a huge attack, was using the tools that people had to remotely work. They went after them. Seemed like it kind of went away for a little while. And then it says, now, armed with advanced AI, cyber criminals are revisiting a COVID-era tactic to pinch corporate data through work-from-home systems. I thought that was super interesting, Nick.
That is super interesting. And it's like, I wonder does it mention what tools like they specifically talk about? Because remember, I don't know if you remember this or not during COVID. Do you remember the Zoom carpet bomb attacks?
Oh, yeah.
where
Big
people
time.
would just be joining random Zoom sessions uninvited and just
In-
causing chaos for no
in-
reason.
Insane videos and reels and messing with professors and court cases and stuff. Yes, I do.
Yeah, and it's like those were purely, chaos tactics, I think,
Yep.
right? It was just people, some people just want to watch the world burn, and it was those people doing it, right?
Yes.
As far as what tools would be, as far as the remote work tools, though, I can absolutely see people, taking advantage of those. I mean, you're creating intentional remote access holes for your employees. So, if businesses are at risk getting breached or compromised with just user behavior mimicking in general, imagine what happens when you have to allow your entire workforce to work remotely and have access to all of your resources when they're not in the four walls of your business. And what's even more interesting about that, I think, is there's a lot of people. Look at what happened during COVID, right? Everyone got sent home, and everyone had to start working from home. And whether or not you were a business that supported remote work before that time or not, you had to adopt it. And so there was some places that were used to having remote workforces when COVID came around, right? Like there was places that had already been working with remote employees for a long time. Like I had been working remotely for about 10 years by the time COVID hit. So
Okay.
it was zero difference to me with the way that I worked, because I worked remotely and engaged with people on a consulting basis or on a contract or retainer basis. And I kept doing those things, right? And the companies I worked for were really used to facilitating that type of access. But think about people that weren't so fortunate, right? That were used to having people in the office, and all of a sudden you still needed to be in business, but your employees weren't allowed to come to work. And you, not a technologist, had to figure out real quick how to make it okay and possible for all your employees to securely work remotely and efficiently. And it was like, okay, business as usual, and 1, 2, 3, go, do it all different and don't mess up. Right.
And an extra step is, what percentage of those people are not technologically advanced, that we're working in a traditional format, and now you're making them the most digital and technological format.
Right. And that's the big thing. So you got to figure a lot of these tools were being compromised in the COVID era because they were deployed quickly. Oftentimes they weren't following best practices. And wherever there is chaos, that's what breeds vulnerability. And you have to consider that. Now, if you look at like hackers target remote work tools again, right? I would imagine it's probably the same handful of tools that people are hitting in the same types of, architectures, like, remote access portals, stuff that lives inside of DMZs and people's networks, and trying to then get past those environments into production networks, VPNs, remote access VPNs, all that good stuff. It's like, that's all vulnerable stuff if not deployed properly.
Oh, spot on. Spot on. It's so interesting, like getting into this stuff now. When I see these things come up, I'm like, oh my gosh, I guarantee Congruity has something for that. Oh my gosh, we're talking about stuff like this. It's everywhere. Like it really is everywhere. And we're in this like changing times where, again, that COVID work from home greatly changed the way people interact with their computer and their career for almost everybody still to this day. I don't know many people that fully went back traditional. There's still usually a lot of mixed mode. And so, yeah, where there's chaos, there's opportunity. And so I can see that entirely.
Absolutely. I wonder what attacks have happened and what people are seeing, like what spurred that article on.
Yeah, I don't know the most details on it. Paywall, of course.
I was just going to say it's because they hide it behind a paywall that no one's willing to pay for.
Yeah, no. All right. Before we get into our topics, Jim Harris has a great question for you if you have any info on Nick. Since my computer makes backups by itself, can you find the date malware may have been installed and set to that old date?
Yeah. So I think what you're asking is, if your computer makes backups by itself, can you find the date that malware may have been installed? So the answer to that is yes. And then set it to that old date. Are you saying then reset your computer, restore it back to that one day before malware hit?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And the malware goes away?
If you do it correctly, absolutely. And so it depends where the malware is living and how it's in the environment. And so oftentimes, if let's just say for your example, Jim, you were an individual computer on a network by itself, and you didn't have to take in all the other possibilities that exist, right? You got infected with malware on the 1st of July, but you had a backup from the 25th of June. And you go through July, and now we're in almost August. You find that this has happened. You look back and you identify the infected files, and you know for a fact that they got infected on the 1st of July. If you had a backup from the 25th of June, you could absolutely restore your entire machine or just the infected files back to the 25th. But the risk that you run is typically, malware is tricky, right? It likes to install itself all over the place and then build itself in little monitors that watch for its installation processes. And when you delete them, they reinstall themselves. And, they've gotten really good at what they do. So, it's without doing a total system restore back to that date and losing any of the data that you've accumulated between then and now, it's really iffy whether or not you'd get it or not. But if you did, for example, if you did just nuke everything and go back to a full system restore from that 25th backup date, then you would be in a pre-malware infection state. And that's, I think we're going to get into some of that too. It's a perfect discussion for today, because we actually, one of the questions I do know is coming along today on Dan's list is about backups and ransomware and those sorts of things. So, it's a very similar discussion. So we'll have some more details on that here today as well.
Let's hit right into it. So what it's going to be today, guys, are quotes that are said as myths. And to understand what a myth is, I used to teach ancient Greek mythology. A myth is something that is not necessarily proven true. So I'm not saying these are wrong. I'm not saying they're false, but I'm also not saying they're true. These are statements that I've heard, statements that have been sent in, statements that I've searched for, and let's address them. So piggybacking right off of that, and by the way, I did not pay Jim to say that. I don't know Jim personally. He prompted that question himself. Nick, if someone were to tell you, hey, we have backups, so ransomware's covered, is that a true statement?
No,
Okay.
not at all. I mean, it's a big part of being ransomware safe and aware, right? Part of the strategy to mitigate the risk of ransomware is having good backups. But the challenge is with ransomware, a lot of times they find and infect your backups.
Oh, wow.
So you got to think back to what we talked about with dwell time. If someone is sitting in your system for 160 days, as is the case on average last year, is that they're not only there's going to be a few things they understand about you at the end of that 160 days. They're going to understand who you are. They're going to understand how many employees you have. They're probably going to understand your revenues, your accounts payable, your accounts receivable. They're going to know how much money you bring in from a revenue standpoint on a monthly basis. They're going to know what bank transfers happen. They're going to know a lot about your cash flow, so they know how much they can demand from you. Now, if just like, ransomware is a business, right? And your encrypted data and your inability to access it is their value. That's what their business depends on. So if your business depended on things like that, you obviously do things to ensure that your interests are protected. So if a business is only your customer, if you're a ransomware shop and the only way a business becomes a customer of ransomware gang, whatever you are, is their data being encrypted and unaccessible, then you do things to make sure that they're not going to be able to wiggle their way out of that situation without paying you. So what they do is they'll find and they'll watch the cadence in which you do your backups. They'll watch your backup targets to where they go. And oftentimes they'll actually encrypt and ransomware the backups before they ransomware the main systems. So they'll go in and they'll find your backups. They'll find your most recent ones. They'll encrypt those, lock them up, and make them inaccessible. And then they'll go through and launch the rest of their attack, encrypt the rest of what they're doing, and leave their ransomware note. And oftentimes inside of it, it'll say, any attempts to restore data will be, met with, XYZ threats. Or, they're just, they'll state like, don't even try, we found them, they're inaccessible and they're not usable.
They're like talking smack as they do it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they do it
Wow.
all from like a very customer service oriented mindset too. Like it's they want Stockholm syndrome to ensue like, day one. But no. So I mean, are you safe because you have backups? Absolutely not. It's, the backups themselves are vulnerable depending on how and where it's backed up. So being, aware of the threat and how it works and, doing the right things to mitigate it include a good backup strategy for sure. But they should be offline backups, right? They should be backups that people can't get to. A lot of the time, the people that we see that are the most successful getting out of ransomware situations without paying a ransom are people that have offsite backups, offline backups. And so that usually depends. And, that brings in the discussion of are tape backups still a thing?
Right.
Magnetic tapes. And we talked about before,
Yeah.
they are. And it's one of the reasons we're seeing this resurgence of tape-based backups is because people are, finding that they're not online, they're not readily accessible, they're not actively mounted file systems, they're not accessible through a machine that can be compromised. And so they're immutable to some extent.
Interesting. And Jim, I'm going to need you to get out of my head immediately because the literal next one I was going to bring up is very similar to this. So I'll read Jim's and then pose you mine. He says, many companies used old CPM systems programming, but does a PC or Mac make it any safer? Unbelievably wild. This was my very next one. I've heard forms and versions of this for years and years now. And it's that Macs do not get malware. That on PCs, in different types of phone devices that are not Apple, you have to worry way more about the malware. You have to worry way more about the viruses. And just magically, if you have an Apple device, you're good. And Jim is kind of saying the same thing with PCs and Macs. Is there something different today? Is there something between those two? And if you don't know anything on this, feel free. I didn't prep Nick for this one. Feel free to let us know. But I thought that was a super interesting point because I've heard it, but I've never questioned it. I've never thought about it. And I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So there's, I'm actually pretty familiar with it. And I was looking up a statistic as you were talking, because my answer is going to be, no, it doesn't mean that it's impossible and it doesn't mean you're safe, but it does mean you're less likely. And the reason for it actually isn't what you'd think is, I think a lot of people have that impression because of Apple's marketing, right? They want you to think that that they are more secure. They are impenetrable. Things are much safer. It's part of a closed ecosystem. There's less likely for developer fraud, all those sorts of things. And to some extent, those statements hold some truth. But the real answer, in my opinion, and I think it's the popular opinion among most security practitioners in our space, is it just comes down to market share. It really does. It comes down to market share and, the juice being worth the squeeze. And the numbers I was looking up while you were talking was just to kind of see like what the market share looks like between, Windows, for example, and Mac OS. So if you look at like from an operating system standpoint, all the machines in the world that run Windows, it's about 72% of desktop and laptops are running Windows. Wow. With only 14 to 15% of desktop and laptop users running Mac. And then the others, of course, consuming with, you have Linux, Chrome OS, and things like that. And that mix of all those other operating systems consume the other 15%. Yeah. So it's basically you got 62 to 72% is Windows, 14 to 15% is Mac OS, and then 5 to 15% is Linux, Chrome OS, and others, etc. So the real answer, in my opinion, is that if you're going to code something to work well, to steal information off of people's systems, Are you going after the 62 to 72% that is arguably easier to infect in the first place? Or are you
Wow.
going after the much more difficult and smaller footprint and harder to find 14 to 15%? And I think it's real easy to do the math. Like if you're a bad actor and you have limited time and resources on your side, you're going after the market share, right? You're going after the market leader.
I had never, ever thought about that. I thought and like you said, it probably is more difficult and stuff. But yeah, and Nate brings up a great point here. He said Windows is just more used in business than personal. 1,000,000%, right? When think about how many, because Microsoft is Teams, right? Think about in business, that's commonplace as a platform is Teams. And so interesting. And you're right. Like if it's two different systems, if I'm going to spend time and money investing in doing something to one of them, I'm going with the bigger one, just regardless.
Right. And it's the same with phones. You look at, people are like, oh, okay, well, then if that's not true, how come iPhones don't get viruses and malware and the things that other Android phones get? So Android's not Windows, Android's Linux. iPhones are technically running a version of Linux that's closed by Apple. So how come Androids have malware and iPhones don't? Again, worldwide, 72% of people are carrying Androids. And the reason for that, I know. And the reason for that is the popularity of where we live. So
True.
if you're here, if you're here in the UK, iPhones are super prevalent. In the rest of the world, they're not. They're not nearly as prevalent in the rest of the world. And that's why you see the popularity of apps like WhatsApp. If you go to a place that has like a heavy international presence, like let's just pretend for a second we're like we just decided today to do our live stream live from a hotel lobby in Dubai.
Okay,
and
let's go.
we're standing there and we're hanging out in Dubai and we're making lots of friends because we just got done shooting a live stream and it's you and it's me. So we're, approachable people and we're talking to everybody. I bet you 9 out of 10 people that we tried to exchange information with would try to do it through WhatsApp, as opposed to asking us like, what's your phone number and country code to be able to put in all of that information to use iMessage, because they probably don't use iMessage and they probably don't want the fees for having to do SMS across carriers for international phone numbers. So the rest of the world's answer to that is WhatsApp. And that is for the same reason that the ransomware and the malware percentages are what they are. It's just literally based on market share, in my opinion. Largely.
That makes so much sense. And then here, if we were to go to a hotel lobby in, let's say, Daytona Beach, Florida, right? And we're going to do a live stream.
Tap.
Yeah. And if we started talking to people, if they were like, hey, let me get your WhatsApp, we're going to have red flags and like alarms going off. Like that's almost like a scam thing here, but it's common everywhere else. Wow. I never thought about that either.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like at the end of the day, it all really does come down to like what the low hanging fruit looks like and what your most, likely targets are using.
Yeah. Okay. The next one is personal, and you're going to help me be able to respond better because I talk to a lot of people. Go figure, I'm an extrovert. When I go places, I like meeting people and talking to them. And oftentimes it'll be on something like a Tuesday or any day. And they'll be like, what do you do? And then I get to talk about like this exciting new chapter in my career and in my life where I'm now working with a technology company, a cybersecurity data management company, and they help protect companies, banks and hospitals and all these things, right? I get to go over all these really, really, really cool things. And oftentimes I'll meet a business owner or somebody that is like high up in decision making at a business. And the number one thing they say when I tell them about Congruity 360 and I tell them about what we do, I have two actually that they say. I'm going to start with this one. The number one thing they tell me is, oh, that's super cool, man. Banks and hospitals and stuff. We're not large enough to be targeted though. Because I'll start asking questions. I'll be like, oh, do you guys have this with your employees? Do you do this with your employees? And they say, we're not worried about that. We have nothing in place. We are not large enough to be targeted. And my brain, I don't have facts. And so talk about my brain would say, there's got to be small businesses that get targeted, that get attacked, that are, because I get emails and stuff. Like, what's your perspective on that?
Oh gosh, I mean, it couldn't be further from the truth.
Okay.
The bulk of incident responses that I've been a part of are less than 1,000 employee companies.
Whoa.
And again, while you were asking the question, I had to get some numbers on my side here, and I'm even really, I thought they were going to be high. I did not think it was going to be this high.
Okay.
35-ish% of ransomware attacks are on companies with between 11 and 100 employees.
Whoo! So you're talking real deal, family owned in cosmetic world, small batch style companies. Wow.
Absolutely.
35?
Yeah. And you know what's crazy is the percentage of companies that get attacked with less than 10 employees is actually only about half of that get attacked over 1,000 to 10,000 employees.
Wow.
So like if you look at 10,000 plus employees, like gigantic enterprise, right?
Yeah.
It's only 11% of ransomware attacks.
Okay.
If you take the 11 through 100 and then 101 through 1,000, so let's just call it 11 employees through 1,000 employees, that consumes 68% of ransomware attacks. So almost 70%, almost 7 out of 10 happen to a company that's under 1,000 employees. So it couldn't be further from the truth. It's the prime market for ransomware.
So the market share thing doesn't super apply here because people would, if they pushed back, they would say, well, why aren't they just going after these corporations and charging $90 million? You're not going to charge a 20 employee business $90 million. They are just casting a wide net and seeing where the heads pop up.
Well, this is market share though. If you think about it,
okay,
is the reason I'd say it's still market share is there's more sub 1,000 person companies in the world than there are plus 1,000 employee companies in the world.
A lot more.
So yeah, a lot more. So there's more small businesses. So if you're targeting a small business, sure, that small business isn't the large market share holder in their space, but the small business profile is the market share of businesses in general. And if the majority of ransomware attacks, like we know, happen through phishing, then if you take 100 people that you don't know and you send to those 100 people that you don't know who they are, where they work, and you send them all 100 emails, and let's just say all 100 of them got infected, what percentage of those infected people work for a small company versus what percentage work for a large company? And I would say there's probably a larger percentage of those people that work for a smaller company under 1,000 employees.
Yeah.
And you got to figure most ransomware attacks are not targeted, right? They're spray and pray, right? They're going after the low hanging fruit, like the easy path of least resistance. And that's oftentimes companies with less policy and less training and less familiarization. And the best part, the best ransomware target that I could think of is someone that thinks they'd never get hit by ransomware.
Whoo. Hold that one. Yes. Okay. I got the piggyback on that. But an analogy that came to mind for that approach is instead of fishing with a single hook to go fishing, they're using dynamite.
Yeah.
Just blowing up a huge area. Don't care about the collateral. We're going to get something where if it's a single hook, you're targeting one fish, very specifically the right depth, the right bait. They just say, boom, we're going to get something.
It's like, it's the difference between, like, you see those boats with like the long arms that go off the side of them with like all the fishing lines, like the drag lines going along.
Yep.
And that way they can say line caught fish, even though they're sitting there just flinging fish into the boat coming off of these lines. You know, who's going to catch more fish and not care what they are? Like, you see those guys, they have to go through and weed out those live bins, and they're like octopus, squid, okay, tuna, okay, fish, you know, and they're keeping the good stuff and they're throwing out the junk that they don't want. And think about that compared to the guy who's sitting on the edge of a single pier with a single harpoon gun waiting for a certain shark.
Yeah.
Like, who's gonna get, you know, who's gonna have something to eat later that night, whether it's a shark or not? It's gonna be the people with the 50 fishing lines, gonna eat, obviously. Yeah.
Well said.
They don't care what. It might not be good. It might not be big, but it's gonna be something.
All right. You just talked about who you thought is the most susceptible to these attacks. I, of course, will never say names. I was talking to a friend of mine, and they own an ad agency. So, and they are growing right now. They have employees. You've actually met this friend of mine, and they have hired employees, and their job, this terrifies me for this industry as a whole. Their job is to get access to most things, especially on the marketing side, the ad side, but also there's money, there's a whole lot involved of other companies, and then they manage their ads, they run their ads, they buy ads on Meta, they buy things through Google, they buy things through Shopify, but they have the access of that company. And I was like, dude, are you worried about like these new waves of attacks and these different things? A real response to this statement. This would be a small business. And this is literal. His sister works for him. The guy who started the company works with him. They've been at it for years. And then the owner is my age. Everybody else is his age or younger. And his exact response was, our employees would never cause a breach.
Ouch.
I know enough now doing this to understand how wild of a statement that is. But what is your gut reaction when you hear that from a business owner, that they are so confident that their employees would never cause a breach? Because I'll be honest, I didn't know how to respond without being offensive. And so I just didn't really respond. What is your gut
response of, oh, so you're a target isn't the best response then, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a dangerous perspective to have, right? And it's like having the "it can never happen to me" attitude about getting in a car accident, right? It's just, of course it could happen to you. You're in a car and you're on the road. A car accident is absolutely possible for anybody that's in a car that's on the road, right? But as far as, I mean, you got to look at some of the most, okay, so here, and I know exactly who you're talking about. I feel like texting him after reading this is that, you have some of the most talented technologists in the world, right, have really great teams of other technologists. And those people have been on the front pages of newspapers as being the source and being the responsible parties behind breaches and behind ransomware attacks. I was talking to somebody a while back, and the idea was, we were talking about using automation and AI in a security sense.
Okay.
And we were talking whether or not they were comfortable, and they weren't comfortable with using AI and using automation from a security standpoint. And my argument to them was, well, your attackers are using automation and AI. So, unless you want to be at a severe disadvantage, so what it ended up coming down to me just having a mindset discussion with this person, because the mindset of this, right?
Yeah.
Of like, our employees would never cause a breach, just like how, not wanting to use new technology in order to prevent attacks. Those are the mentalities that wind you up on the front pages of newspapers. It absolutely is. And until those attitudes, stop taking the stance that they're taking, I mean, we're going to keep seeing the problems that we keep seeing. I mean, talk to anyone who's been hit with ransomware and ask them if they were like walking around paranoid for the weeks ahead of time, waiting for ransomware to hit them. Like, of course they weren't. They were going business as usual. And so think about this. Like, I have a guy who we did a ransomware incident response for. I think I talked about him once before. He's here in the States, and he owns a dental implant company.
Okay.
Where he makes, laser modeled dental implants. And he, I think, has 10 employees, and they're all really smart people, right? They run 3D printing machines. They run these ceramic, engravers. They run this crazy equipment. They're a mix between, he doesn't have salespeople, which, it's not to be that guy, but we've seen a lot of breaches where it's like the sales laptop, the field sales guy, clicks on the link, gets the thing, and he's busy and it gets infected. And it's
often
the source
remote.
source of a breach, often remote, right? So he was actually pretty safe. They were, everything they did was in the cloud. They had a single office. They all worked there. There was no remote employees. They have engineers and other, otherwise, skilled, successful, intelligent people working for him. And the last thing on his mind, and again, he's like a 10 or a 12 person company, but they absolutely print money doing what they're doing. And because of that, they became a target. And they were actually a targeted attack that someone got in there on purpose because they wanted to for whatever reason. And they ended up learning a lot about them and ransomwaring them for a lot of money. And they ended up having to pay it. And it was all through one of his most senior employees, one of the smartest guys that he started the business with. It was his business partner that let these people in the door. It wasn't one of their employees that's polishing artificial teeth. It was his business partner that let him in. Yeah. But again, you go back to the size of the company, prime target. You go back to the industry, again, prime target. You go into access of other people's data, and if he's down and can't access his data, he's out of business. So he's a likely target to cough up a ransom
because he's got to get back.
Right. And then you layer all of those things on with that stance and that attitude, and it just puts you right in prime targets.
Because I think Leo's spot on here. I think some owners have a wrong lens, and they think like my employee's not going to be malicious. They're not going to do something like that. And Leo's right. He said employees likely won't cause a breach on purpose, but bad guys are looking for opportunity, not motive. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's not like Mr. Robot here where we're like activating employees and getting them to do malicious things and then rewarding them for it at the end. Like that definitely still happens, but it's more Hollywood than not.
Right.
But you got to think like to that last point, and it's, I guess, I don't want to draw it out too long, but look at everyone remembers the big breach with Caesar's Palace, right? Everyone remembers one of the largest casinos in the world getting brought to their knees by ransomware.
Crazy.
And they were losing millions of dollars an hour, right? And it was a huge, huge impact. That breach was caused by a targeted phishing attack. It was a phone call. It wasn't even an email. No one clicked on a link. No one did anything they weren't supposed to. The attackers social engineered their way into that attack through the IT help desk.
Wow.
And on a single phone call, we're able to launch that attack. And it was because, and again, look at who opened the door that time. It was the help desk. It was the technology team. It was the team of people that literally are made to protect the digital assets of the casino. And they were the ones responsible for letting a bad actor in. And so to think that your employees specifically would never cause a breach, of course they wouldn't intentionally. Right. But everyone makes mistakes, and it only takes one very, very small mistake to let that happen.
Yeah. And Jim says this was kind of my understanding too from my days as a teacher. We'd had to go through training for this. He said, don't most employees just open files in their email without thinking who or where they're from? Is that a common entry?
Yeah, I mean, that's a real common entry, but it's getting less and less. It's getting more and more difficult for people to get in that way because of just education and news and people in training, right?
Yep.
There's like, for example, like I have access to a lot of, environments out there doing what I do. And so every company that I have remote access with to be able to do things in their environments, I have to go through all of their individual security trainings, just like the rest of their employees do, in order for them to remain compliant. It's like anyone who has access to the environment needs to have the same training. And so these training modules that we go through, it's all, you get put on a list where they send you phishing attack emails and they see if you open them. And if you open them, you fail the test essentially, and you get put on a list of people that need further training. But it's, some of these phishing emails, man, are getting really, really good. Like they're targeted, they're believable. The domain names are like
spoof the name. As someone that does YouTube for a living, I get every day probably 6 to 7 spoof emails where it's somebody posing as a potential sponsor, and then you look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, that even has like because the email systems are getting better at external, internal,
Mhm.
verified email accounts, those types of things. But man, are the hackers getting just as good at covering it up and making it appear, and using that system.
You got to think it's their job,
Yeah.
just like when you get in a rental car and you turn on like the infotainment system in a brand new car and you're like, wow, these things have gotten really good. My phone connected super easy. Like people are actually doing their job here and making the world a better place for technology. It's every time you think that someone's getting better at doing something malicious, just like something's getting better at doing something helpful,
Yep.
it's their job.
And you just gave them a new opportunity. Yeah. And
It is.
unfortunately, I think G Squared is right here in these situations. Because again, I do talk to a lot of these size companies, these mid-size, small type companies. And it seems like a lot of them, it's almost like the burden of education is on Congruity, unfortunately, because a lot of these owners are not educated in the risks, and they do not become educated truly until they experience it in the worst way possible. Where after the fact, they're like, oh, yeah, that would have been an incredible system. And it's just wild to me that with all the stories and stuff we hear now, to think like, oh no, not us, not us. We're too small. Our employees won't do it. And it's like, man, unfortunately, it's a new way of life.
Yeah. And what people have to understand too is they think that when they fall into that too small boat, there's actually my employees would never cause a breach and I'm too small for that to happen. Actually have two follow-on thoughts as well, which I think psychologically are just as, if not more so, more dangerous. And that is, if it does happen to me, I'm not going to be able to pay these millions of dollars that you see in the news. They'll just leave me alone. They'll go away because I'm not able to pay. They will go away and they will leave you alone and they will leave your data encrypted when they do it. And they do not care. So you got to figure, you're not going to go leave. They're not going to get a bad Yelp review if they decide, okay, never mind. We're going to fire you as a customer and walk away from this one.
Here you go. Here have it back.
Here's your stuff back. Sorry, we bothered you. No,
you tough cookie.
They move on. They delete your encryption key and they walk away forever and make it so none of the data is ever recoverable by anyone ever again.
Wow. Okay.
So, unless you're in the, we have no digital asset. Like if you're truly someone that says we have no digital assets and we do not carry any digital footprint and therefore we are not susceptible to ransomware, like that's the only way. Like if you're an auto shop that does everything on paper slips and doesn't accept credit cards, right? Like maybe you're in that boat with your Windows 95 machine that's sitting in there running your printer. Like you can go get a new one if that gets whacked,
Right.
I think those are really the only people that are about it. Like for example, I have a guy that I know he's in the area here. He picks up, how do we say this? He picks up dog waste in people's yards for a living.
Oh, poo-poo patrol. Yeah.
Poo-poo patrol. So this guy keeps all of his scheduling in the cloud. He's got it all on Google Docs. He's got it all on O365. We were talking not too long back and we were talking about what we do. And he was asking about ransomware, and him as a single guy was like, man, he's like, it's so funny to say that in the dog waste removal business, I would be out of business if I got ransomware. He's like, I have multi-factor authentication on everything. I make sure that all my stuff is, dual factor. Everyone makes fun of me because they're like,
good for him.
You do this for a living, like, what are you so worried about? He's like, listen, it's what I do for a living. He's like, I'm going to protect it. I'm going to multi-factor everything. I'm going to do backups on everything because if something encrypts my spreadsheet that I have with all my addresses in it, I'm out of business.
You're starting over. Wow. Good for him. Good for him. But again, people probably mock that. It's pretty crazy. And I got a topic that's super on point. But Leo poses, as always, a great question. And I wonder, like, for Congruity, what angle they've looked at this. But he says, how interested are most companies in continuing education for the technology that they depend on? In my experience, I don't see like a burning passion for companies like that. These middle companies, right? 10 to 1,000 employees. They are so in the weeds of their day-to-day operations and making the to-do list and completing what they have to do as business owners. it's easy for something like cybersecurity and data management to fall to the wayside until it's an actual problem in their face.
Oh, yeah.
And so I don't know if it's as much an interest, but it's just not making its way up on the priority list because they have bills to pay. They have demands to meet. And if you're shoring up your cybersecurity, that isn't right now gaining anything profit-wise, monetary, nothing wise. It's just protecting yourself. And if it's like, hey, I need to make this money right now, or let me make sure I'm safe in the future. So many of these middle, small businesses, they're just, it's not on their priority list.
You have to do both. It's a cost of doing business, right? It's unfortunately, it has become just like those people can't make the decision, like, do I want to make more money this month or do I want to pay rent? Like that isn't an option, right?
Insurance.
You have to pay your rent in order to be in business. You got to pay your insurance bill in order to be compliant and be in business. You got to spend time on your digital footprint and make sure that you're secure and safe from ransomware, or else, it's negligence, right? You're putting yourself and your employees and everyone's livelihood at risk, not doing it, right?
It needs to be in those categories that you just talked about. Rent, right? Utilities, insurance. As a business owner, day one, you're like, okay, I know I need to do this. I know I need to have this. Cybersecurity data management needs to be in that category in 2026. Has to be.
Oh, yeah, it does. It absolutely has to be. It's no longer a vitamin. It's one of those things where it's not optional. There's what's funny is you could offer somebody $100 to protect their data from ransomware. And you might have to talk them into it and they might turn it down, but you can offer that same person for $1,000 to unlock their data and get them out of a ransomware situation, and they'll pay it in a heartbeat. And it just goes to show it's hard to sometimes get people to solve a problem that they haven't experienced yet. And it often, and it's always easier to sell a painkiller than it is to sell a vitamin. And it's one of those things where, if you're in the situation, you'll pay anything to get out of it. But convincing that same person to pay money ahead of time to prevent it is borderline impossible.
Yeah.
If they don't see the problem.
Spot on, man. All right. I have another one. You used the word cloud twice. What about the statement, the cloud provider secures all our data?
Just like it's the same situation of having cameras on your house and having a deadbolt. But if someone knocks on your door and you open your door and say, come on in, then your deadbolt doesn't matter. Your cameras on the outside of your house don't matter, right? ADT no longer has anything to say about that person in your house because you let them in. And they're using your privileges once they're in there to do whatever they're going to be doing. So if you look at the cloud aspect and you're like, the cloud provider prevents all of that. Sure. It prevents someone from, without your knowledge, coming in, banging down the door and walking in. But if you escort that person into your cloud environment by way of clicking on a bad email or getting malware infection because you fell victim to a phishing attack, those protections no longer count. They're negated. Wow. You've just circumvented all of those by your own actions.
So the cloud doesn't have it at that point. You've clicked on that link. They have access. The cloud is like, I'm out. I can't help you here.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the first place that gets hit because you look at like O365 or you look at like Google Docs or you look at those sorts of things. They might be compromising the same account that people use to log into those resources. And again, market share. If I'm an attacker, what am I going to try to log into with stolen credentials? Very first thing, if I have the ability to do it. If I have your 2FA and I have the ability to respond to codes and I'm able to log in as you somewhere, am I going to try to log into whatever local regional bank that's operating out of Flint, Michigan? Or am I going to try to log into Bank of America?
Yeah.
Am I going to try to log into someone's small hosted exchange server, or am I going to try to log into O365 and Outlook.com? Right. So oftentimes, the having the big presence in the cloud is actually just the loudest, most open door once someone has the credentials they want.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, that's an easy one. Now, similarly, and this is one that I would say is kind of, when I talk on a day-to-day basis to people, this is kind of where people's understanding of cybersecurity is at. I'll talk about this and they will say things along the lines of, but I have an antivirus. I pay for an antivirus. We are protected. And I'll start to push back and say, well, and they'll say, no, like I have scans that are scheduled every day. I do manual scans. Is that enough? Or are there attacks that are not related to an antivirus?
What's to say it's their machine that gets infected and steals their credentials? Their credentials
Okay.
live in lots of places. Their credentials live in every provider they have. They could get if they don't have, for example, you could have all the antivirus in the world and have bad password hygiene. And you, all of a sudden you have a provider that gets compromised because you bought dog food from their website once. And next thing you know, your cloud account is hacked. You're locked out of it. Your password's changed, and you can't even log in to check the logs of the antivirus software you have because your accounts are all disabled.
So, okay, to be super clear here, the pieces I'm picking up, an antivirus is for a physical device.
Yes.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, antivirus runs on your local machine and it looks at your local file system. It looks at in-memory processes, the programs that are running, the things that you download. You can even get like the internet protection suites from like Norton, where all these things where it's like, we scan your emails, we look for phishing attempts, we look through this and this and this, and we don't let you download bad attachments. Like that's all well and good, but it's happening here. And that's not to say that, well, what happens if you're one of those people that uses the same password across every one of the websites you have an account on?
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, someone else gets hacked. They now get your email address and password combination.
Doesn't matter. Wow.
All of your cloud accounts are just as at risk as ever before. And it can 100% all happen without even ever touching your computer or your local antivirus.
It almost seems like that has been a major shift in the last 10 to 15 years where the attacks did used to be virus because we were downloading things like illegal music and stuff like that. And that is where it would be on your device. And then now the attacks are coming in a completely different way. It's a whole new sport almost.
Oh, it is. They're coming in completely different vectors for sure.
Okay. All right. Now on this, and you might not have an opinion, but Jim said, do you have an opinion on some of the better antivirus for PC or not?
I don't have an opinion, and I'll be perfectly honest. I think if updated properly, and this is like the worst anti-commercial for antivirus ever, I think, is that I think the built-in protections between the Mac OS and what you get with Windows Defender, and what you get with, unless you're doing things you shouldn't be doing on the internet, and you're downloading things that you knowingly shouldn't be downloading that are potentially risky, and you're avoiding clicking on links that you shouldn't click on, there's no reason that built-in protections from your operating system and Microsoft aren't going to be sufficient for you.
Okay.
In my opinion, anyway, a lot of those systems, not all of them, but a lot of them, they don't do much more beyond the built-in protections, and they add a lot of load to your system in order to do it. So I fall on the do your updates, make sure you don't postpone them, do your updates regularly, update your antivirus systems that you have built into your operating system, and don't do what you shouldn't do.
That is a smart man, and OD was right there with you.
Make sure you update them.
Make sure you update them. They're updating for a reason.
And look, you got two technologists here in the same room. And while I'm saying, as long as they're updated and used properly, he's typing the words, as long as you update them, because obviously attacks come out every day, and a virus definition from a month ago isn't going to catch a new virus that was written yesterday.
So true. All right. We have like a minute left here, but this one isn't the most on topic, but I'm genuinely from the bottom of my heart curious. I hear just because of VPN ads that are seemingly on every video I watch now, and then just people talking about it. The last like 2 years, I traveled more than I ever had at airports. Public Wi-Fi is always extremely dangerous. I know the ability to have access. I hear about the stuff at the airports where you plug into a certain thing. I understand the possibility. What is the reality of cyber attacks using public Wi-Fi or using things like the plug-in at the airport? And I'm being 100% genuine. Is that real, or is that something that is more kind of glorified because it's a sexy article or headline?
I think it's a little overblown. And there's something that people really, really mistake on this whole thing too. Data security and data privacy are two very different things in this situation.
Okay.
And also, device security is very different than information privacy, right? So, in the sense where there's a lot of ways where public Wi-Fi can be dangerous, and there's some that are more sci-fi than others, right?
Okay.
There can be these attacks where you have a rogue access point that gets stood up, and all of a sudden everyone connects to it instead of connecting to the real SSID. And then everything that funnels through it is transparently visible to the people that are watching the access point. And I've hosted hackathons and other events where people do these things, and like there's the hack the box events and all these things where we do this type of stuff for sport. And gathering someone's banking information when they're connected to you as an access point versus the real network that's out there in the airport, for example, that's all still encrypted traffic, right? So you got to really ask yourself, like, what websites do you go to that don't have the S at the end of the HTTP, right? And if it doesn't have the S, are you actually submitting any sensitive information or not? Because that's the only stuff that's going to actually be visible on a man in the middle type of an attack like that, where with like a rogue access point.
That makes sense.
And what I will point out though, just to, again, I know we're over, but just to eliminate the false sense of security that I think people get, using a VPN from one of those on a public network doesn't prevent anything from seeing your device that you're connected to that network with. So like if you're worried about people on a public network attacking your machine and finding a vulnerability, using a VPN doesn't prevent that. You're still attached to the network. It's just the data that you're sending over the network now has multiple layers of encryption. So if there's something capturing that traffic, it's going to be impossible and or much more difficult to capture it. But a VPN doesn't prevent you from being a target by any means.
Great info, because that's one of the ones that's the most regurgitated over and over and over and over again. So interesting. Okay.
Good point, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. He said browser won't even let you go to HTTP anymore.
No, it won't. It's like, are you sure? Are you super sure? Sign here. Okay. Dot this. Open a new window.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. We told you. Good luck. Wow. Wildly interesting. Wildly on point today, you guys. That was incredible. Just a reminder, next week our show will be on Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll be right here. Nick will be typing like a madman, pulling up those statistics with some new digits working. If you missed the intro, Nick has surgery on Monday. We didn't want to risk having a tired Tuesday or whatever. And so we will be here on Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you guys for the incredible. It was like several of you, Jim and Leo and G Squared were like Kenny were in my brain on the things we were talking about. So it's so fun to have you guys involved. If you're watching the replay, drop a comment. Nick, some last thoughts for everybody about today's episode and moving into next week.
I mean, this was a good one. Talk about stump the chump, though, like we were talking about. I'm going to need a break after this one. This is great. This was good. You got me thinking on these ones here. This was, I like it. So, no, this was great. And thanks for everyone for being here. And we will see you guys again next week. Hopefully all healed up on Thursday.
Awesome, guys.